Hello, everyone. My name is Bernie Wolfsdorf. I am the managing partner of WR Immigration, an immigration law firm with 8 offices throughout the United States. Joining me today is my partner, Vivian Zhu. Thank you, Vivian. Vivian will do simultaneous Chinese translation. Our topic today is the new EB-5 law, which was signed into law by President Biden and is titled the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. Vivian?
Thank you, Bernie. 大家好，我们这次是WR 移民律师事务所为大家宣讲这次新的 EB5 区域中心项目复活以及它的新的诚信条款。我们知道这次新的法案终于已经经过国会的签字了。它的正式的名称呢叫2022年 EB5 改革和诚信法案。
Thank you, Vivian. And the standard legal disclaimer that we provide on all our webinars is that this does not constitute legal advice. This presentation is for information purposes only. And if you seek a legal opinion, please contact us. I can be reached at Bernard, B-E-R-N-A-R-D, at Wolfsdorf, W-O-L-F-S-D-O-R-F. Can also go to our website, wolfsdorf.com, and please feel free to reach out to me.
这次的宣讲呢，只是作为一个大众的信息为大家简单讲解这个新法的内容，但是呢，不构成我们正式的法律意见。如果您有关于您的申请的具体问题，请到我们的网站或者是通过我们的邮箱联系律师。
Now the good news. President Biden has reauthorized the EB-5 Regional Center Program, which is now approved until September 30th, 2025. The new law is called the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. So we have a 5-year extension, we have a brand new law, and this law is already in force as of today.
在今天呢，这个新的 EB5 法案终于通过了，也经过了总统签字。然后这次是一个长达5年的新的延期，所以现在的 EB5 项目它的有效期会到2027年的9月30号。这次是一个全新的法案，因为增加了新的诚信条款以及修改了以前旧的内容。这次新的法案名称是2022年 EB5 改革和诚信法案。
For many of you who've already applied in this program, you are aware that the Regional Center program actually expired in July of 2021, and we have had 8 months of worry because there has been no Regional Center program, only the direct program. Now, this new law has got some good parts, and I'm very happy about the good parts. There's some other parts which are not as successful, but I do believe that the EB-5 program will come back to life and will be very popular, and there seems to be lots of demand for EB-5 at this point.
在去年的7月1号呢，旧的 EB5 项目过期了，所以我们有长达8个月的时间是不能递交区域中心申请的，只能递交直投的申请。所以这次新的法案又重新的为 EB5 区域中心项目注入了生命力。虽然这个新的法案呢，它有很多还不足的地方，但是呢，也有新的条款是对于投资者或者是整个项目来说是有优点的地方的，所以我们等一下会一一的讨论。
For the Regional Center program, there will be a 60-day window before we can file these cases. So it's time to get your source of funds ready. And get ready to file. By the way, there will also be a requirement that you must file an I-924 exemplar with USCIS in order to be able to file the 526. In the long run, this will be a very good practice. Having an exemplar on file with the 526 is a good practice, because it will help to verify that the project meets the eligibility requirements. Over to you, Vivian.
这个新的区域中心法案要求呢，是我们在生效以后有60天的一个窗口期，在这期间呢，新的投资人可以开始做他们的资金来源的准备以及文件上的准备，然后在60天之后呢，即可递交新的申请。但是有一个新的要求呢，就是说这个项目必须要先由项目方递交一个924的样本申请以便移民局收到这些项目的文件，然后投资人才能递交他们的526申请。这其实是对投资人来讲是一个有好处的，因为这样子的话就确保移民局有项目部分的文件，能加速后续投资人526申请的批准。
So the very good thing about this new law is that there are many integrity measures designed to protect the investors. This program is now over 30 years old, and in many respects, it needed this additional version, these new changes, in order to make sure that the investors are protected as much as possible, because the requirement for EB5 is that you do have to make an at-risk investment, but I think we want to avoid unnecessary risk if at all possible. Now, because this law is so substantial, it covers many different changes, the government will take time to publish new regulations, and this is going to be a very important process. We cannot tell at this point how long the regulations will take, but those regulations will be very important for the USCIS to be able to actually adjudicate cases. Vivian?
这次的法案最好的地方呢，就是我们可以看到它引入了诚信条款，因为这个项目也有30年的历史了，所以也是一个非常有必要的改革方向。因为在这个之前 EB5 投资人他们会受到一些有欺骗性质的项目方的侵害，所以我们看到了除了 EB5 所必要的风险投资这块因素以外呢，投资人确实需要受到这些诚信条款的保护，以便他们以减少他们受到不必要的风险。但是呢，在诚信条款引入以后，我们需要等一段时间来看政府它会制定怎么样具体的措施来履行这些诚信条款，所以现在我们还不知道会有怎样的具体的要求。这一部分呢，我们还是会在后续的讲座当中为大家讲解。
Thank you, Vivian. And now on to the very important topic of the increase in investment amounts. The program initially is $1 million investment. And if you were in a rural or targeted employment area, it was reduced down to 500,000. There have been some changes, but I don't want to complicate it. Try and keep it simple. As of yesterday, the minimum investment amount was $500,000 for the EB5 program and $1 million if you were not in a rural area or a TEA. As of today, we have new minimum investment amounts, and the minimum investment amount is currently $800,000. So EB5 is now $800,000 US. If you are investing in a project that is in a rural area, that's 20,000 population or less, a high unemployment area as defined by the Department of Homeland Security, or an infrastructure project. Now, the infrastructure projects are as yet undefined. The high unemployment areas, we know very well what the rules are, although there are new rules, and the Department of Homeland Security alone will adjudicate the TEAs. No longer the state or even municipality can determine the TEAs for the reduced amounts. And of course, rural is going to be very popular as well, because the rural projects, although potentially higher risk in many cases, will be at the reduced amount of 800,000. For everybody else, the minimum investment amount is $1,050,000. There used to be $1 million, it's gone up to $1,050,000. And moreover, these amounts will automatically adjust every 5 years. So $500,000 was relatively cheap in some people's mind, because over 30 years with the price indexing, it was really discounted to almost 50%. So again, to summarize very briefly, the minimum investment amount for EB5 is $800,000 today for a rural area, high unemployment, or infrastructure projects, and $1,050,000 for all other types of EB5. And that is the amount that has to be put at risk in a job creating project, whether you are talking about the direct program or whether you're talking about the regional center program. We do have new increased minimum investment amount of 800,000 and 1,050,000 if you do not qualify for one of the reduced by virtue of the fact that you are investing in a rural, high unemployment or infrastructure project. Over to you, Vivian.
这次法案还有一个重大的变化呢，就是最低的投资金额发生了改变。以前我们看到的是在高失业率区的投资金额呢，要求最低是50万，在非高失业率区呢是100万。这次新的法案里把较低的投资金额涨到了80万，而满足80万投资的项目呢，必须是农村地区的项目或者高失业率区，也就是以前所称的 TEA 地区的项目，或者是基建项目。那目前法案里面呢，并没有给出具体的定义，什么是叫做基建项目的定义。但是对于农村地区呢，要求的是人口必须低于2万人以下。我们预计农村地区项目会变得比较受欢迎，虽然这些项目呢，通常在投资上来说，投资风险会比较高。另外一个呢，就是以前所称的 TEA 项目，但是这次新法呢，它也改变了 TEA 的定义。现在以前 TEA 是可以由各州政府来决定的，但是随着新法的改变呢，现在 TEA 只能由移民局来制定了。那么除了这3种项目以外呢，其他的项目都必须适用于较高的这个投资金额了。那高的投资金额也从100万涨到了105万美金，而且这个投资额呢是每5年会自动调整的，所以现在是80万到105万，但是5年以后这个投资金额又会涨得更高了。
Thank you, Vivian. And now on to one of the most complicated topics, one of the topics where we do not have 100% clarity as of the present time, but a topic where we are very hopeful, particularly for people who come from backlogged countries such as China. Everybody knows that the Chinese cutoff date is still stuck in November 2015. I know the current visa bulletin shows that China is current for direct, but if you look at the footnotes to the visa bulletin, you will see that the visa bulletin now will automatically change and China will become backlogged again upon the signing of this statute, with the visa number going backward for China to November 2015 upon enactment of this new law. So the very brief period where China was current for EB5 direct projects is over, and presently for Chinese nationals, the visa bulletin cutoff is November 2015, which is a little bit disappointing because there has been no recapture of the wasted visas in the last 2 years. Some estimated 30,000 EB5 visas are lost by virtue of COVID, by virtue of inadequate staffing and processing. But the simple point that we currently have is that the China EB5 category is once again backlogged for both regional center and for direct because of the automatic process based on reauthorization. And I think it's important for Chinese investors to understand this.
我们接下去要讲的是一个比较复杂的问题，也是一个我们没有确切信息的方面，也就是关于中国的排期。我们知道目前呢，这个排期表显示的是中国的直投 EB5 是不用排期的。那么区域中心的排期呢，在那个项目过期之前是在2015年11月。这次随着新法的签订然后区域中心项目又复活了呢，直投的排期马上也要开始了，所以它又会变得和区域中心项目一样，也会恢复到2015年的11月。所以我们目前不知道这个排期是不是会在短期之内有提高。在去年呢，因为疫情的影响，再加上项目过期，还有移民局他们人手不足等多种原因，而造成了在过去2年当中，我们预计有3500个 EB5 的签证是被浪费掉的， EB5 的绿卡名额是被浪费掉的。而这些浪费掉的名额呢，政府也没有打算把它们再重新投入到使用当中，所以对于中国的申请人来讲呢，这是一个比较大的损失。在新法投入以后呢，我们还是要继续关注这个排期表的移动，因为我们知道在过去几年也有很多投资人退出了 EB5 的申请，所以退出的人里面呢，就是退出这个因素呢，也可能会提高这个排期的速度，所以有很多不定的因素，我们目前无法给出一个具体的预测，这个还是要等新法开始以后，然后我们再通过政府给出的数据计算，可能才会得出一个比较清晰的、比较确切的排期的年数。
Thank you, Vivian. Now, to explain a little bit more about the reserved visas or the set-aside visas, the biggest question in my mind, which we do not have an answer for yet, is will the State Department set up a separate fast lane or express lane for these 3 new categories? Number one, 20%, or approximately 20%, exactly 20% of the 10,000 visas, some 2,000 visas, will be set aside exclusively for investment in rural projects, which basically is a population of 20,000 or less. 10% of the visas, or approximately 1,000 a year, will be set aside for these DHS determined high unemployment areas, and 2%, or about 200 visas, will be set aside for infrastructure projects. So the question right now, which we are not 100% sure of, is will the US government establish 4 separate lanes, fast lanes, or separate lanes for the reserve visas? In my opinion, they should. And if they do, there will be extremely high demand, particularly from Chinese nationals, for these 3 categories. And I will explain why, because another thing which we'll explain in the next slide is that the government for the first time is allowing one-step processing or combined processing of who have a visa available, meaning they are not stuck in the waiting line. And this will create massive demand from people in the US, such as those on F1 OPT or H1B visas, or possibly even people who've been here on tourist visas, as long as they didn't have the intent to stay when they entered. People who've been here already 90 days on a B2 visa may be able to file a one-step procedure with a 526 and a 485 together. And this is a huge step forward for the program, provided they create a separate waiting line for new Chinese investors. And we do not know the answer to that as of the present time. Vivian, to you.
新法还有一个比较重要的规定呢，就是预留的签证数量，会有3个不同的种类呢，可以获得预留签证数量。一个是我们刚才提到的人数在2万人以下的农村地区项目，它可以获得20%的，也就是每年2000个EB5签证名额。TEA 项目呢，也就是由移民局设置 TEA 地区的项目，可以获得10%，也就是1000个签证名额。而基建项目呢，可以获得2%，也就是200个签证名额。但是我们现在不清楚的一个重大问题就是，移民局会不会就专门为这3类的投资这3类项目的投资人设置不同的排期的通道？如果我们是觉得他们应该这样做的，如果他们真的这样做的话，那么这3类的项目将会在中国市场大热，中国和越南市场大热。因为新法呢还有一个比较重要的一个好的规定呢，就是说在没有排期的类别里面或者是国家里面，投资人可以同时递交526和485申请。这对于已经在美国读书持有学生签证或者是持有工作签证的人来说，是一个非常有优势的地方。所以如果能拿到一个排期比较短或者是没有排期的一个项目类别呢，那特别是对于中国投资人来讲就是非常重要的了。
So again, briefly to repeat, probably one of the nicest things about this new legislation is the ability to file the 526 together with the 485. And if you are from a non-backlogged country, this will now provide a solution for people who are in the US in order to be able to apply for EB5. And I think this is going to be very, very popular. The big question, of course, is will the government create 4 separate lanes, one for high unemployment, one for rural, and one for infrastructure, together with the other regular ones, which will allow people from backlogged countries, presently only China, but possibly also Vietnam and India moving forward, to actually jump the line by filing one steps? And the answer is we don't know yet, but we will find out relatively soon when we have new regulations. Vivian?
所以等移民局制定了具体的实施法规以后呢，我们才知道他们会不会制定4个不同的排期通道给 EB5，也就是说把我们刚才提到的3类可以用到低投资额的3类特别地区的项目，农村地区、TEA 地区和基建地区项目，来把他们的排期分别排出来。如果是这样子的话，对于很多投资人来讲就是非常有好处的，特别是就是已经在美国的这部分人，他们就可以同时递交526和485申请。所以这部分呢，我们也是要等到政府这方面具体制定了法规以后才会知道。
Now, I had mentioned that this bill provides lots of protections for investors. And I have also mentioned that investment must be in an at-risk project. Now, because it's at risk, we've had a pandemic, some businesses can fail. And in the past, this was quite a big problem. The good news is the government tried to fix this with regulations, then the regulation fell down. So as of yesterday, there was no protection for children who aged out because the project failed through no fault of the investor. Now we have a solution, and we are very pleased to let you know if your 829 is denied because the project is defective, there is now a way to save the child from age out, but you will have to make a new investment at 800,000 minimum, possibly 1,050,000, but you'd have to make a second investment. And if you make that second investment within 1 year of the denial of the condition, you only have 1 year of the denial, then the child's age is protected. It's not the best protection. It's not everything that I would like to see. The child also has to remain unmarried in order to qualify for this extra layer of protection for failed projects, but at least there is something for people in this difficult situation to avoid family separation. Over to you, Vivian.
以前的旧的 EB5 法律里呢，对于超龄的孩子来说没有任何的保护措施。那么这次新的法案里，虽然这一部分进步的不多，但是我们确实看到有一点是他们制定的可以保护孩子超龄的这样子的一个情况，就是说如果你的项目失败了，然后申请人的829申请就是永久绿卡申请被拒了以后呢，如果这个投资人他在1年之内，就是829被拒的1年之内，又进行一个新的投资，也就是按照新的法律进行一个至少80万的美金的投资，那么这个小孩的年纪可以从第一个年龄那里开始锁住但是这个小孩呢必须是一个未婚的状态，他才能符合这个就是年龄锁住的这样子的一个保护措施。
Thank you, Vivian. And I have mentioned that this law has many new integrity and investor protection provisions. I'm going to run through these fairly briefly. Number one is that there are new record keeping requirements, and also DHS will now do audits of regional center and also job site visits to make sure that the construction is really ongoing. We have seen some of these, but apparently we're going to see quite a few more of this type of site visit and audits of regional centers. Vivian?
这次新法里还增加了一些具体的操作方式关于就是保持这个项目方的他的一个好的状态的一些措施。其中一个呢，就是他要求区域中心和项目方做好他们投资人和项目进展的记录，这样子也增加国安局和移民局对区域中心管理人的检查。还有一个就是政府现在有可能对项目进行更多的实地查访。我们曾经看到过呢，有一些情况就是有一些项目会受到那个政府人员的查访或者是问话，但是这种情况呢以后会变得更多了。
One of the other requirements, which sounds technical but which is very important, is before an investor makes an investment, they have to review the offering documents which explain the project, and there are new disclosure requirements in these offering documents which require a clear description of the policies and procedures that have been adopted in order to comply with SEC law. So there are new disclosures in the offering documents which must clearly explain how the regional center is complying with the law. And secondly, there is also a requirement for annual recertifications of this compliance. So even if you were in compliance last year, no good. Every year you have to certify again that you are in compliance with both federal and state securities laws. So those regional centers that are not operating correctly will find themselves in a difficult situation.
根据新的法案呢 ，EB5 项目方和区域中心必须在他们的招募文件中做出更多的披露，就是包括给出投资人他们具体的项目信息，以及这个项目方和美国公司怎么样就是制定了怎么样的规定，就是内部规定去满足美国证券法的合规政策和程序这个对于投资人来讲也是非常重要的。那除了这一条以外呢，区域中心和项目方每年还必须要经过美国政府的重新认证，也就是说今年你的公司符合要求了，但是明年呢你要再重新跟政府递交一些文件，以保证这个公司一直是一个好的状态。这方面的认证呢，主要是根据美国的证券法，就是联邦的证券法和各个州的证券法的要求，它跟严格来讲跟移民法上面的要求没有特别大的关系，主要是美国在过去呢出现很多这种证券法上的诈骗，使EB5投资人的利益受到侵害，所以他们在这次的诚信条款当中呢，增加了这些对于公司和区域中心的要求。
Okay, so let's talk about job creation. Many people think of the EB5 program as an investor program, and you invest your money and you get a green card. This is not correct. This program is about creating jobs. Now, we have two types of programs, one called direct, where you have to hire 10 qualified US workers, and the other one is the regional center program, which allows for indirect job creation. Now, the government thinks that these rules have been stretched, the indirect job creation, so they have now placed a limit on the number or percentage of indirect jobs that you're allowed to create, and they have created a limit on the number of construction jobs. So technically speaking, under the old rules, there was no requirement to have actual operational jobs, people actually working there, but under the new rules, a certain percentage of the jobs will have to be real, actual jobs, not merely construction activity or indirect job creation based on expenditure models where you show, well, I've invested a certain amount of money, therefore it's indirectly created a certain number of jobs. So the government has restricted and will require a certain percentage of actual real people working in an operational framework. Vivian, over to you.
新法在创业的数量上面也有一些改变很多人觉得 EB5 是一个投资移民的一个项目，其实它更重要的是关于增加美国的就业。以前的旧法里面呢，就是对于 EB5 直投项目来说，项目方必须创造10个或10个以上的全职工作就是以人头计算的员工的数量，而区域中心呢，它可以算间接的工作间接的就业数量，也就是说这个严格上来说呢，项目方它其实可以不用创造任何的实际工作，比如说它是一个建工项目，只要你的项目投入的那个总的资金量达到一定的要求，然后通过经济计算的方式来说的话，你就符合了 EB5 关于创造就业的这个要求。但是在新法案通过以后呢，政府它限制了这样子的计算方式，它要求每个项目就算你是区域中心项目，你也必须有一定百分比的直接创造就业的人数。也就是说如果是纯靠建工来创造就业数量的项目的话，目前是不再符合 EB5 区域中心项目要求了，所以你必须要有一定的运营的工作，也就是说你这个项目必须要实际的雇佣一定的人数，然后它有限制一个百分比来就是规定每个项目方必须创造的这个那个人数，就是工作的人数。所以如果是纯粹靠建工的项目的话，现在是不能再作为EB5 区域中心的项目了。
Now, I have mentioned that this bill includes new integrity measures to protect investors. One of the things I really like about the new bill is that they have created a new EB5 integrity fund based on filing fees paid by the regional center and, of course, the investor. Now, we will see exactly how much these new fees are when the regulations come out, but the good news is that there will be a fund, we don't know how much will be in it yet, to help investors who lose their money as a result of fraud and other circumstances. So this will be a very strong and good consumer protection measure, but at the same time, we will see an increase in government filing fees, so investors and regional centers will be paying for this. Vivian?
根据新的法律呢，那个 EB5项目它还会建立一个诚信基金，这部分的资金呢，主要来源是从区域中心和投资人的申请费里面来的，所以我们还想要等到那个政府规定新的申请费出台以后，才知道现在新的比如说526和829的申请费会变成会增加到什么样子的程度。但是这部分的钱呢，主要是放到诚信基金里来帮助一些由于受到项目方欺诈行为或者是其他不可抗因素而受到侵害的投资人。所以这部分的要求比较少，所以我们现在也没有一个具体的就是说一个概念说这个它具体这个诚信基金将会怎么样操作，所以这部分应该是在将来由移民局它制定具体的法规，我们才会知道这个部分会变成什么样子。
Thank you, Vivian. Now, one of the most controversial and difficult aspects of EB5 is the concept of redeployment. The requirement is that the jobs and the investment must be sustained up until the filing of the 829 removal of condition petition. Now, the question of keeping the money at risk particularly applies to backlogged countries, and in this case, mainly China, possibly Vietnam and India again, that the money has to, in some instances, be redeployed within a reasonable time. So maybe you have a 5-year loan and the loan is repaid. The money is only allowed to sit in the bank account for a certain period of time, a reasonable time, and then the regional center has to redeploy it up until the filing of the 829 or as otherwise defined in the subscription documents. Now, in the past, the question was, can this money be redeployed only within the geographical framework of the current regional center? So if the regional center was like one county, then the investment has to be back in that same county, which was ridiculous. And now the government has clarified that the redeployment can be anywhere within the US as long as the money is at risk or continues to be at risk. And this means that investors' money could be put in another project that is somewhere else in the country and not necessarily limited to the very narrow geographical boundary of the existing regional center. Vivian, you want to try and get that one?
新的法规呢，同时也对再投资这个要求进行了放宽。在过去呢，我们看到再投资确实给不少投资人，特别是有排期国家的投资人造成了一些困扰。因为当时的法律是这样规定的，就是如果这个项目完工了，然后开发商把钱还回来了，这笔钱如果这个投资人还没有拿到他们的，就是他的临时绿卡还没有到期，就是还没有满足2年临时绿卡的要求呢，这个投资款必须要再投入到下一个风险投资项目上去。而之前的法律呢，对于这个再投资项目的规定比较严格，就是说它必须是在这个区域中心同样的一个地理区域之内的。但是呢，这样子就造成了在投资人在选择再投资项目上呢，就是选择性不大，因为如果本来那个区域中心它的范围已经很小了，那你必须在这个区域内再投资一个新的项目，所以基本上是没有什么选择的。但是这次呢，就是新的法规规定，再投资项目可以是美国境内任何的项目，只要这个投资它是一个有待于风险的投资就可以了。
Now, one of the things that I was very happy to see in the new law is the good faith provision if the regional center is terminated or the person running the new commercial enterprise or job creating enterprise is in fact barred from continuing. So some of the problems we've had in the past was that there would be a really good project, but that really good project affiliated with a bad regional center. And once the regional center was terminated, all those investors, and I'm thinking, for example, the J Peak with potentially hundreds of investors, once the regional centers were terminated, those people were put into removal, deportation proceedings because of no fault of their own, with no option to continue. So now, if the regional center is terminated, or the manager of the NCE, New Commercial Enterprise, or JCE, Job Creating Entity, is debarred from operations, there are solutions for good faith investors to continue their application and possibly reaffiliate with a new regional center, or bring in a new NCE or JCE manager, but at least there are solutions for good faith investors who would otherwise be victims if the regional center is terminated. So this is a very big one for many people who invested in projects that were potentially good, but the regional center or the managers were not correct. Vivian?
新法里面还有一个比较好的措施，就是它现在愿意保护善意投资人不受到区域中心关停的影响。在过去呢，如果是比如说项目本身是没有问题的，但是由于各种原因区域中心被关停了，或者是这个项目方的管理人出现了任何问题而被政府剥夺了管理项目的资格，这种情况都是会影响到下面的投资人的。虽然这些投资人他们自己本身没有任何的过错，但是呢，由于这个法律的规定，就是说你这项目必须要有一个支持的区域中心，而区域中心关停以后，投资人则不可以再继续他们的移民申请了。所以这对于投资人来讲是不公平的。那么这次的新法呢，它增加了一些保护善意投资人的措施，也就是说在一定的情况下，如果区域中心被关停，或者是项目公司的人受到了政府的处分，那么这将就是下面的善意投资人还是会受到法律的保护，他们可以再重新找一个区域中心来支持他们的项目，或者是重新找一个新的管理人。但是重要的是呢，投资人他们的绿卡申请是不会受影响的。
Thank you, Vivian. And now my last, but possibly one of the best aspects of this new law are the grandfather protections. Now, this EB-5 program has been extended over 31 times since 1990. Actually, 1992, the regional center program got extended time and time again, and always there's been some level of concern that the program would be renewed and extended. And we were always worried about those clients who've already invested in the program. Well, the good news is that the program has been extended till 2027, and any petition filed before September 30th, 2026, any petition filed before September 2026 is grandfathered and no further reauthorization is needed. What this means is that if you file your petition before September 2030, 2026, you will be grandfathered even if they do not extend EB-5 again. This provides some peace of mind to investors that, yes, they have to deal with the risk of the investment, but they don't have to deal with the risk that the program will not be extended. So we are very grateful to see this protection, that investors will not have to worry the way many of our investors have been for the past few months waiting for Congress to reauthorize. So thank you, Congress, for doing something right. And on balance, WR is very happy about this new legislation. Not all of it, but a lot of it, particularly the consumer protection, puts the investor in a much better situation if things go wrong because of not because of their own fault, but because the project was potentially bad. Vivian, over to you on grandfather protections.
最重要的是呢，大家都能看到，这次新法它有了一个大家很关心的祖父条款，也就是说，在2026年9月30号之前呢，如果国会不会对那个区域中心项目延期，它也不影响移民局继续审核这个日期前递交的申请。因为 EB5 项目呢，它从1992年开始，它已经延期30多次了，所以对于这个项目频繁延期这一个特点来讲，这是一个很多投资人和从业者都非常头痛的事情，因为它不断的延期，不断的更新，所以每次过期以后呢，大家都会担心这个项目什么时候再延期，以及延期的时候会不会有一些改变，比如说投资款涨价什么的。所以这次新法它终于对为 EB5 这个项目提供了一些稳定性吧，可以这样说。也就是说，我们知道它在今后5年当中，这个法案不会有什么重大的变化了。虽然这次新法它有不完美的地方，但是总的说来，我们还是觉得它是一个非常有必要，有一些非常有必要的变化。然后总的说来呢，我们是非常觉得这是一个非常好的一个新法的通过。
So in conclusion, I'm pleased to say that we now continue to have an EB5 program with a higher investment amount of 800,000 and 1,050,000 for those people seeking to invest. A special thank you to my partner, Vivian Zhu. Vivian is ranked in the top 25 EB5 lawyers in the world, in the US. In my personal view, she's very close to the top. She is, to my knowledge, the only native-born fluent Chinese speaker ranked in the top 25. That may change. And I am Bernie Wolfsdorf, managing partner of WR Immigration. We actually will have 9 offices throughout the US by the end of this month. And it is a pleasure to serve you. If you need to reach me, the website is wolfsdorf.com, WOLFSDORF, wolfsdorf.com. Please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. And we are all very relieved that we do have a good EB5 program back in existence. Why is this program translated into Chinese? Well, because over 70% of the investors have been from China. We don't know if that will continue, but I'm very grateful to my partner, Vivian, for helping explain this to potential investors and to our existing clients. Thank you so much, and over to you, Vivian.
Thank you, Bernie. 所以最后总结一下，就是我们现在有一个重新复活的 EB5 区域中心项目了。新的项目下呢，投资金额上涨了，现在是80万到150万的这样子的一个投资。我们之所以会把这次的讲座翻译成中文呢，是因为我们在过去大部分的 EB5 投资都是来自中国的，但是由于这个新法没有解决的一些问题，比如说排期，我们不知道未来这个项目的主要投资人是不是还是来自中国，这个还是拭目以待的。但是如果任何的客户或者是潜在的投资人有任何问题呢，可以联系我们，我们的网站是wolfsdorf.com wolfsdorf.com 在上面你可以找到我们的联系方式，或者是就在页面上递交一个询问的一个表格，这样子我们也可以尽快的回复你。非常感谢大家收听这次的讲座，谢谢。